Welcome to Literary Lark, the show that examines trends in indie publishing, fiction, and anything related to books. Hi there, and welcome to Literary Lark. My name is Daniel Adorno, and I'm your host. This is the first episode of the show, so I just kind of want to give you a breakdown of what this show will cover, and essentially what the goal of the show is. I wanted to create a show that was very much looking into trends in the self-publishing industry, also speculative fiction, and really anything related to books. So no topic as far as books is concerned is really outside of the scope of this podcast. I like to focus on things such as the processes for writers, I guess writer hacks, if that's what you'd like to call them. Encouragement for budding writers, anyone who is thinking about becoming a full-time writer and looking into publishing a book somewhere down the line, and maybe even going the route of independent publishing. This show is for you. This is definitely the place to be. And I kind of want to give it a definition of lark, which is a bird, obviously. If you saw the podcast image there is a little bird. But beyond that, lark, the word lark actually means an adventure, a journey, so to speak. So I hope to kind of take people on a journey with this show and, really kind of spark some creativity and some discussion around writing and around independent publishing and just all things literary, because I think it's a fun discussion to have. It's something that will engage you if that's where you're oriented with regard to writing and pursuing books and publishing. So the first topic that I kind of want to tackle in this podcast is book covers. Now, if anyone listening out there has ever published a book or wanted to publish a book, you obviously have probably given some thought to what your book cover would look like. And covers are really difficult for indie publishers, I think, because when I've gone out there in the market, whether it's Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and just looked at the selection of indie publisher or indie books, there seems to be a lot that just don't look good. And I think indie authors really want to put their best foot forward with regard to their work, because they're competing against the traditional publishers. And unfortunately, I don't really see there's kind of a gap between mainstream titles and independent titles with regard to cover art. And covers are art. It's not something that is optional for authors. It's definitely what readers see when they first look at a book, whether it's walking down the aisle of Barnes & Noble or on Amazon just browsing. So let's kind of unpack this. Covers definitely require a level of artistry that's involved in cover creation. And if you've ever compared different book covers from different genres, you kind of see a trend. With thrillers, there's always kind of a dark, foreboding kind of cover. Or there's also, with something I'm thinking right now, maybe Dean Koontz or Stephen King, there's something with the typography that is very chilling. Just kind of really comes at you, and it's just very much identifies the book as a thriller in the thriller genre. Same thing with a fantasy novel, which is my genre. You see, there's more of a kind of a medieval typography, or very the cover art itself is very medieval, or kind of got the sword and sorcery theme going on, with maybe a hero character or some kind of a fantasy beast, whether it's dragons or elves or you know, something along those lines. So you see the artistry, whether in both typography and the picture or the art itself, reflect what the genre is. It's supposed to have an emotional impact on the potential reader. And just kind of a segue into typography. Typography is really important. I don't think that indie authors give as much weight to typography as they should. I've seen quite a few indie authors use sort of the I forget the name of the script now, but I've seen books that have just a script, a very like cursive lettering on a thriller book, which is really sort of a no-no, and just very bad choices with regard to typography. They might have an excellent cover art, just a great image on the book itself that really stands out, but there isn't that typography to accompany it, and that's kind of sad, because without that, I think it loses a lot of readers' attentions, and they kind of move on to something else. So typography should really be at the forefront of any indie author who is either doing their own cover or hiring a designer to do their cover, because it's kind of, you can have great art, but if the typography is not good, if you've got something like Comic Sans on the cover, you're going to lose your sale, or any kind of attention that your book would garner. With kind of on the opposite end, minimalism, I've seen, can really work with an overly or with a cover. I'm thinking now of Hugh Howey's Wool series. He's got some great minimalist images there. It's not something really elaborate. It's just really artistic images with really nice, clean typography, and it's minimalist. And there are other indie authors who've kind of embraced that, and I think that is really helpful, especially if you're doing your own cover, because it's hard to find really great cover art from if you're trying to do it cheap. If you're trying to find something really nice, but kind of balancing between spending thousands of dollars on a designer to design an art cover, or just finding something on Shutterstock. And with regard to stock images, I would say be very careful. Indie authors out there, be very careful with Shutterstock and other stock image sites, because there's a tendency for, and I've seen this even just in my own genre, there's a tendency for authors to pick the same images. They pick the ones that they like, the ones that really stand out, the ones that are nice. For instance, there's the very on Shutterstock, and I've seen this image quite a few times. It's this image of a dragon just breathing out fire, and it's very nicely drawn. It's kind of a old school artistic style. It's not like a photograph. It's a drawing. It's very well done. But I've seen about 3 covers on Amazon with this image, and that is kind of disheartening. I think for me as an author, if I had a book out and was very proud of that book, proud of the time I spent writing it and putting it out there and promoting it, I would not want to see that book cover be used by 2 other or 3 other different authors. It would be kind of disheartening. So I think authors have to be very careful with regard to stock images and finding something that is not very popular, because it will, I think, be a disservice to your book if others have it out there. But that's kind of a side note. Going back to the minimalist approach, I think books like Gone Girl, for instance, which is a mainstream book, but or traditionally published book, it has a very nice. It's the image is really not much of an image at all. It's kind of a black background with some, I think it's some threads or hair or something. But the typography, the font that's used on the title, is excellent. It's very clean and very simple, but the total package of the minimalist image and that clean font just really grabs people, really interests a reader to want to buy that book. So I think that is what indie authors should go for if your genre allows for it. It's kind of hard to do a minimalist cover in the fantasy genre because there's more of a desire to have kind of a heroic image or just something that's very very artistic, because it's in that most fantasy is in the medieval time setting. So, but it's worked for other fantasy books. I'm thinking now of George R.R. Martin's books. They're kind of minimalist, not completely. There's still quite a bit of, I would say, artistry that's woven into that cover. It's not totally minimalist, but the font is definitely, again, kind of the focus. The typography is the focus, I think, on the Song of Ice and Fire series, Song of Fire and Ice series. So minimalist can work to your advantage. You just have to know the rules and know what kind of typography will work for your genre. And with regard to this conversation of book covers as art, there is definitely power in the book cover as far as the message you are trying to communicate to your readers. If a book really has a dramatic cover, let's just think of something, let's say in the fantasy genre, and you've got just your hero in the front and he's wielding a sword or maybe a bow and arrow, and depending on the colors, if you've got kind of warm colors and the typography is just well laid out with the image itself, you really can bring out the drama in the story, and that will pull in readers. So cover art must highlight the drama in the story. I think that's essential for someone to pick that book up and want to read it, and not be in the other camp, which is just ignore it and walk to the next book or go to the next page on Amazon and find something else. And don't kid yourselves, indie authors. If you're listening to this, books are judged by covers. Books are definitely judged by their cover. Readers make decisions based on that cover. So you want to make sure that you put your best foot forward and not put something out there. Your story could be amazing. It might be the best writing that you've ever done. But if that cover that's on that book is just not well put together, not well executed, totally misses the mark of your genre or the drama that you have in that story, then it's going to fail to capture the attention of a reader. Sadly, but that is the truth. And I think indie authors have to be smart about do-it-yourself cover creation. And what I mean by that is that if you're wanting to go the route of creating a book cover by yourself and not hiring a designer to do it for you, you have to understand good aesthetics. And this is something that I've been learning for over a year now, with regard to my own covers and what looks good, what doesn't look good, what works and what doesn't with regard to images and cover art. And I actually have a blog post dedicated to do-it-yourself cover creation And I've used things, gotten to know processes in Photoshop and in some 3D rendering applications to basically become acquainted with what artists do what they're trying to capture when it comes to book covers. And it's not easy. It's very much an art, and it can be learned, but if you are not inclined in that direction, it's very hard to pick up. And I've kind of seen that in my own journey into art. But this idea of good aesthetics is, if you have trouble being able to distinguish between, let's say, something like the art in Snow White, the original Disney movie Snow White, and something like Toy Story, which is by Pixar, then I don't think you will be able to distinguish good art on a book cover when it's something like thriller genre versus sci-fi. So you need to understand, if you can't distinguish between something like Snow White and Toy Story, there's a problem. There's a gap there, and you might be able to bridge that gap with some, taking some art classes or looking at some Photoshop tutorials or kind of learning as you go. But I've seen this with people that are really great writers, but not so great with regard to visual art. So understand good aesthetics. And just to kind of elaborate more on that, Snow White was a hand-drawn 2D cartoon, essentially, whereas Toy Story is 3D CGI kind of art. It's a very different aesthetic, but I've talked to people who would say that they look the same to them, that it looks like a cartoon either way, and that's where there's that gap. And you have to understand, do you have that gap before you go into creating a book cover, because it might be hard for you to see the difference between something that Stephen King puts out there and something that's just your run-of-the-mill independent author that was just kind of slapped together. So be aware of that and really kind of do a self-assessment of your artistic talent and whether you can make your own cover. But I would definitely recommend, for any first-time indie author who's looking to publish and wants a great cover out there and wants to put their best foot forward, hire a designer. There are many options out there for designers, and they can come cheap. They don't have to be ridiculously expensive. You can certainly go into, the higher thousands of dollars when it comes to designing a book cover, but if you're just starting out, I would not recommend that. There are some of the sites that I've found that are very helpful. 99 Designs is one that where you can hire some designers, and actually it's kind of like you make a project with your own specifications, and then you have 99 designers or more that look at your project and put out the image that you want, and you get to decide which one you like and which one you want to go with. And that can run between, depending on the packages that are available, that can run a couple $100s. So that's one option. Another cheaper option would be to go on to Deviantart.com and look through portfolios of artists there and find one that you feel really kind of goes well with your genre, and contact an artist there. And some of them are willing to do commission work, and for those that are starting out, they might do it for much cheaper than you can imagine. But I would say be careful when you go on DeviantArt, because there are some people that do, let's say, just a nice landscape art or art that isn't book cover art really well, but when it comes to a book cover, there are specific things that an artist needs to know. So sometimes it's hard, if they've never worked on a book cover before, for them to capture that, because it's not just a great image that you need. You need, again, it's that combination of a great image, great typography, and just great composition within the book cover itself, and highlighting the drama of the book. So having a great image isn't going to be the only thing that's necessary. So consider that when you are looking or talking with artists on Deviantart, or maybe somebody that that's a graphic artist. For myself, I was blessed to know a graphic artist who had not created a book cover before, but he did it very effectively. He had done CD covers and video game covers and things like that, so it wasn't too much of a stretch to go into book cover creation, and I would recommend him highly. His website is 7livesdesigns.com. You can find him there, and he's got some great portfolio art there that you can check out. But to kind of wrap this conversation up about book covers, I would just say, if you're starting out and if you are looking to put your best foot forward to really capture readers' attentions with your book cover, with your story, typography is very important, so consider that. Consider a great image, and consider what genre you are writing in and what kind of an image you need. Always compare, if you're doing thrillers or sci-fi, just go out to Amazon, look at that category of books, and compare the images, and you kind of see a theme with each of these genres. So try to capture that theme if you're creating your own book cover, or if you're commissioning a book cover. Don't just do what you think looks cool or what you like, but really try to capture what's popular in the genre, and what readers like to see with regard to your genre. And do as much research as you can with regard to book covers and creating them, because I think it's time well spent. It's good to know how you can, because believe it or not, book covers are a way to market. It's a marketing tool for you to have an image of a great book cover that really captures your story and captures readers' attentions. So you want to not just go into Microsoft Paint and just slap something together, because that will hurt you with regard to sales, and with regard to people even taking you seriously. So I think that's it. So thank you so much for tuning in and listening to this first podcast episode of Literary Lark. My name is Daniel Adorno. You can find me at danieladorno.com, and there's multiple social media icons at the top of my site that you can reach me at: Facebook, Twitter, even YouTube. So thank you so much for listening.